We are picking up where we left off on Tuesday. Anybody remember out of all these what we were talking about last on Tuesday? ERISA. We were talking about ERISA. Okay, gold star to anybody that can remember what it stands for. Employee Retirement Income. Go ahead. Income Security Act, precisely. And these titles, even though they look really long and onerous, really describe exactly what it is. This piece of legislation is addressing employee retirement income security. Okay. Slide 2. And let's just do a quick review from this, and then we'll move on. So what does that mean? Trustees must monitor the pension plan. What's important about that? Yeah, you can't just keep your employees' pension funds in your checking account, right? I'm being facetious, but you don't have access to them anymore. You've got to send them away to a third party, right? And then secondly, what ERISA said was it set a vesting schedule. Can somebody remind me what a vesting schedule is? What does it mean to vest in your pension plan?
Where you get to take all their money out, percentage or how long you're there.
Good, exactly. Vesting means how much of the money, what percentage of the funds that my employer contributed can I take? I always get my own money. I always get the interest and dividends on my own money. Vesting pertains to the amount of funds that I have access to that my employer contributed. And what this says is, when do you have to start vesting in your pension plan? Once you've been at work for 3 years, you have to start some sort of vesting. And by 6 years, you have to be 100% or fully vested. In other words, your vesting plan can't say, you've got to be here 20 years before you get 100%. Because then you don't have any mobility, do you? Okay. And this is just a sample vesting plan. You can write it any way you want, just as long as you start within 3 and you're vested within 6. I'll tell you, most really highly competitive jobs, 100% vested immediately. I've got one of my sons works in San Francisco, and his friends are all Silicon Valley. And I mean, you can't get a young person to come to work there unless they're 100% vested immediately, right? So same in higher ed, in my field, 100% vested immediately because faculty is notoriously mobile. So certain industries, you're always going to see full vesting straight away anyhow, just for recruiting purposes. Okay, the second thing, or second screen, now we're still on ERISA. Some other things that ERISA did is it set up this organization called PBGC, and I'm going to put that up here. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And this is pretty important because this says even if all the stuff on the prior screen goes wrong, the federal government is still going to insure your pension. So, for example, with Enron. Enron employees, their entire pension was Enron stock. Okay, first off, that is a huge no-no. You don't want all your eggs in the proverbial one basket. In other words, I'm earning my income from, and I'm reliant on my stock for my retirement from one company. That is not a very solid financial planning idea. But a lot of people did it that work for Enron. And they were sending the stock certificates to a third party, and they were vested, and they complied with everything. But the bottom line was Enron was corrupt from the bottom to the top. And when the stock crashed, not only did you lose your income and your job, but you lost the value of all the stock. Federal government has to step in and pay benefits to those employees. That's part of ERISA. Okay, the bad news is right now with the federal deficit the way it is, the PBGC is broke. So it's supposed to be there, it's supposed to be helpful, but it's in the state that a lot of things are in the federal budget, which is not great. ERISA also requires stringent record keeping. In other words, they can come in and audit you at any point in time, make sure that your bookkeeping's in order. Yeah, that's basically the nuts and bolts of that. Okay, ACA. This sometimes cracks me up. People say, well, I don't like Obamacare, but I love ACA. Well, those are actually the same thing, okay? The name of the law, formal name of the law is Affordable Care Act. The term Obamacare was arguably intended to put some hyperbole with the act. Obama owned the name. Everybody calls it Obamacare. But ACA is the formal name of the piece of legislation. It was passed through Congress in 2010. It was upheld by the Supreme Court twice. Different tenets of it were taken all the way through to the highest court of the country. And it's been slowly phased in over the last 6 years. Okay? The first couple years was the easy stuff. The stuff everybody loved. You can't be denied for pre-existing conditions. There's no longer a lifetime cap. In other words, if you've got a kiddo that you're taking to Seattle for critical care, cancer care, you can roll through $1 million like that. Insurance companies used to be able to say, oh, you've reached your lifetime cap, bummer, we're done paying. Okay, those were you could stay on your kids that were in college could stay on your, or young adults, even post-college, could stay on your insurance until you were 26, until they were 26. So all the easy stuff sort of got phased in first. Then the tougher stuff came, right? Some of the tougher stuff said, you've got to be covered or you're penalized. If you don't have health insurance, you're going to pay a penalty. You're going to pay that on your tax return. It's going to lower your refund or increase your tax bill depending upon where you're at. Okay? If you're a small employer, you're going to have to provide insurance to your employees. We'll give you some subsidies. If you're a large employer, you've got to provide insurance to your employees. So there's been some things that have phased in over the years. We're fully in it now, just in time. It really was fully implemented, all 1,900 pages of it last year, just in time to be told it's going to be repealed. So, stay tuned. What I'm showing you is what's actually the law of the land today. By the time this class is out, I can guarantee you it's not going to be. Okay, so stay tuned. Who knows? There's a couple pieces of legislation embedded in the big piece of legislation, which oftentimes you'll see with complex laws. There's a overarching umbrella law, but then there's lots and lots and lots and lots of pieces because the way law is made is it comes up through different houses and committees and lots of collaboration and negotiation and riders and blah, blah, blah. Okay. One of the first things got passed is how the heck do we fund all this? Well, the way we fund this is through Healthcare and Education Reconciliation Act. Basically dings high-income people for additional payments into Medicare. Okay, if you're single, you make over 200 grand, you're married filing joint, you make over 250, you're going to have to pay another 0.9% into Medicare. Okay. There's also, and this gets a little bit convoluted and it's maybe a little bit beyond our scope, but there's also a tax on high-income people that have something called unearned investment income. In other words, most of my income comes because I have a bunch of money in the stock market and I get a lot of interest and dividends, right? I'm not a W-2 person. I just sit with my couple $1 million and live off the interest and dividends. I'm going to get dinged additional taxes on that unearned investment income as well. Those are the two major ways through HCERA that some of the facets of Obamacare are paid for through the federal budget. As you can imagine, this has a lot of controversy around it. Not a big deal in my life. I don't make $200,000. You make $200,000, there goes another 0.9% of it. You're not very happy. Okay. So, and again, this law is really, really, really complex. It's like trying to explain, like I explained the civil rights law in, 8 minutes or less on Tuesday. Trying to explain this in 10 minutes or less is very much a bird's eye view. But another piece of it was, so everybody's got to have health insurance. You've either got to buy it on exchange, get it from Medicare. Your small employer provides it for you. Your large employer provides it for you. Well, immediately small employers are like, I can't afford to cover all my people with health insurance. That will break me. Well, you've got to, but then you can get a subsidy or a tax credit from the federal government. Okay? And there's, I mean, again, this is, 20 words when the law that is in this little bullet is probably 80 pages. There's a sliding scale of different credits depending upon your revenue, your turnover, the composition of your workplace. But your takeaway here is large employers have to provide it, full stop. Small employers have to provide it, but they get help from the government. And if you're just an individual, for example, like I've got a tax practice, I've got about 50 clients, and I'm going to say 30 of them, 40 of them, 35 of them are self-employed. Okay, so they are their own employer. Well, what do they do? Anyone know? What do they do? If I'm a self-employed carpenter, where do I get my health insurance? I have to go to one of the exchanges, right? We happen to live in a state where exchanges were legislatively approved at the state legislative level. If I live in one of 38 states have it, I think. 12 don't. Then I've just got to go to a private provider in my state. Huh?
They call it the marketplace.
The marketplace. Yep. And there's different levels of health insurance. You can get bronze, you can get silver, you can get platinum. Everybody's got to have the minimum level of bronze. Okay. And then there's this whole other program called shared premiums. So say I'm that self-employed carpenter and I make 20 grand a year and I have 2 kids. I can't afford a $350 a month premium. Are you kidding me? So then the government comes in and they share the premium with me. In other words, I don't have to pay $310, I have to pay $29, and they pay the rest. So that's an overview in a nutshell how it looks. Any questions about the ACA? I'm sure you've heard tons and tons and tons of stuff in the media about it, and I'm sure most of you have had experiences with it.
Would you say that the ACA is funded by the HCERA and the PPACA?
The ACA is primarily funded by that Medicare and that unearned investment income tax I was describing.
Those 2 things?
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that there's still a profit motive in all this because the insurance companies still operate for a profit. In countries where they have strictly single pay or what we call socialized medicine, that's kind of a hot button word. But in countries like Australia or Israel or Japan or the UK or Canada, and you look anywhere else in the Western world, basically for this model, the profit motive's removed. Okay, there's no profit motive. So the ACA in our country was formulated to try and be kind of collaborative between both sides of the aisle. In other words, a lot of Republicans weren't willing to consider a single-payer system, so we have this sort of hybrid model. For the insurance companies, still, you're looking at executives that are getting $20 million a year bonuses, and that's all integrated into our premium system. So that's kind of a mess. So we'll see what happens. State laws. So every state as well has got laws that we have to comply with from a payroll standpoint. Every state has got a workers' comp law. You have to have work comp in your state. It's not optional. Like, oh, we here in Idaho don't feel like having workers' comp. It's mandatory from a federal standpoint, but it's not run by the feds. It's run by each individual state, and it looks different for each individual state. We'll learn in the last couple weeks of the class here that you can buy workers' comp in Montana privately, or you can self-fund it, or you can go to Helena and get it from State Fund, but it has to look exactly the same regardless of where you buy it from. In other words, I can't have a really good workers' comp policy at my shop and you've got really a crappy workers' comp policy because you went on the down low and cheap. The benefits are the same regardless of where you buy it. Although, depending upon what kind of job you have, you can pay wildly different premiums, right? So if I'm a truck driver or a jockey or, I work in utilities up on the poles, you're going to be probably paying 30 cents on the dollar. here in a classroom, how am I gonna get hurt aside from tripping over whatever this thing is, right? So they pay like, 2 cents on the dollar that they pay me. So you can have different premiums based upon job class or what you do for a living. State disability benefits. What does disability insurance mean to you guys? Do you know what that is when I say disability insurance?
It helps make up the difference on what you earn when you become disabled.
Yeah, it insures your income stream. So health insurance insures your health. Workers' comp insures your income stream if you get hurt on the job. Well, what if I'm skiing and I run into a tree, or I'm driving home tonight and I get my head on, and not at work? My health care is going to be covered, but turns out my paychecks are going to dry up pretty darn quick as soon as I run out of my PTO, right? Disability insurance covers your income stream. Now, which of these programs did we look at that covers, the feds cover your income stream? Yeah, OASDI, Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance. Okay? If anybody here has had experience with this program or knows anybody that has, you are not going to make enough money to, live in a hovel and eat cat food. I mean, you might get $700, $800, $900 a month, literally. Okay, it's not taxable, but people always go, well, it's not taxable. Well, okay, but you're still living on $700, $800, $900 a month, really? So I will tell you this flat out. Somebody told this to me when I was very young and just starting out in the workforce. It was the best piece of advice I ever got. Not best piece of advice I ever got, but one of the goodies. For like $8 or $9 a month, you can buy private disability insurance. It's nothing. It's a 6-pack of beer or a half a pizza, okay? And you can go to bed every night knowing that if something happens to you that's not work-related, that you're going to still bring home 67% of your paycheck, non-taxable. So I feel very assured that I'm protected, my income's protected. A few states have what I just described. We don't here in Montana. California, Puerto Rico, Delaware, Hawaii, just what you would imagine, all the really progressive states, have got state disability where you pay a little tiny percentage, 0.3% of your paycheck, and your employer puts in 0.5% of your gross pay. And it funds a disability program so that if you get hit by the car or hurt skiing, you still get income. But it doesn't exist here, and it's only really in the most liberal states. Okay, so here you've got to buy your own private disability insurance. Okay, and then this is just, I think the last 3 or 4 screens is just sort of a really broad outline on how the systems and processes work surrounding HR and payroll. So what's first off the difference between the payroll department and the HR department?
Human resources usually has to do with hiring, promotion, things that affect you on the job. Payroll gets you paid your money.
Yeah, payroll is a piece of HR, isn't it? That gets you paid. But HR is in charge of everything from recruiting, training, retaining, promoting, compensating, evaluating, firing, internal disputes, ongoing continuing professional ed, anything like that. So it's a vast system, and payroll's just a piece of that. Now, the first thing that they want you to know, and see if you can come up with this, what law did we read about that says you've got to keep payroll records that meet very stringent requirements? Anybody remember that?
Was it FICA? No.
It wasn't FICA. It's up here. It's one of these guys. It was the FLSA. Anybody remember what that stands for?
Fair labor.
The Fair Labor Standards Act. And what are the 2 major premises of the Fair Labor Standards Act?
Minimum wage and labor law.
Minimum wage has to be paid, and
Family,
that's
child
FMLA.
labor.
I think it's overtime. The two big tenets are minimum wage and overtime, but it was also the first law that addressed child labor. Okay, close relationship, obviously you know that. Okay, so in mid and large size companies, just what I just said, recruiting, selecting, orienting, training, terminating, all that good stuff. We have to keep stringent personnel record keeping. It's embodied in the HR system. What law did we read about where all of a sudden we realized that our job descriptions had to be comprehensive enough to encompass essential tasks? ADA, Americans with Disability Act, right? ADA, Americans with Disability Act. So it's no longer okay to just say, oh, okay, as the CFO, you have to be able to, you know, manage the accounting system and integrate financial statements with the blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. It also has to say things like, has to be able to sit in a chair for 8 hours a day. Because if I've had, 3 herniated discs, guess what? I'm not physically capable of sitting in the chair anymore. I'm going to have to get an ergonomically correct workstation, right, where I can do some standing, maybe some kneeling, some sitting, because I can't be stationary for 8 days. So all of a sudden my job description actually has to contain all these physical things I have to be able to do too. Okay, and that's really, really critical stuff. So a requisition for personnel, this is a little bit of an old-fashioned term. In the old days, they were actually pieces of paper that would float into HR. But now, say that I work in marketing for Microsoft, I work in global marketing, Western European global marketing, and I know that I need to bring on 2 new, marketing assistants for a big push in France and Germany. I would put through something called a requisition for personnel to HR. In other words, this has been budgetarily approved. Now you need to put the call out for people to apply for this position. And then companies that have HR departments, you've got to comply with EEO, FMLA, ADA, all these laws, just to even write the job description and put it out there. So it's not just like, oh, I want to hire somebody, and the old days, call it the Missoulian or something. I mean, there's a lot of process and procedure you have to go through. And again, this is all sort of old schooly looking. When's the last time here anybody filled out a paper application, right? But there's got to be some sort of repository for your information. More and more we're seeing things before you can even apply to a company. What do you have to do? Anybody, huh?
Is it W-9 or something?
No, that's for independent contractors. But how many of you have taken like Myers-Briggs tests or personality assessments or aptitude assessments before you can even get to the link to apply for a job, right? So it's like all these digital screening tools. So here they're still kind of old school going like, so you're going to go walk in and shake somebody's hand and get a piece of paper. I mean, not saying that doesn't happen. In Montana, it actually does still happen, but that is kind of going the way of the dinosaur. So, and I've talked to a couple key employers here that I work with in the accounting and technical world are saying that one of their first vetting mechanisms for bringing somebody on board is how well can they navigate the platform, the digital platform to apply. If I tell you I want a cover letter and a resume and you only send a resume, right? If I tell you I want them saved PDF and you submit Word docs, you're out the door. So it vets the people that can follow instructions to do something as simple as even get in the door to apply for the job. And I'm hearing from them that kicks out 1 out of 2 people. The simple fact that you didn't follow the instructions to get to the platform to apply. They go onto your cover letter, and you got a typo in it. I mean, there's so many simple vetting things because there's just, it's just so much easier to do in the digital world. I mean, back when I was CFO of companies, you asked for applications for a job and, you opened up envelopes and you took out cover letters and resumes and you had to read them all. There wasn't something that could scan through it and say there's 4 grammatical errors, right? So it's just making it really easier now for employers to get to the best of the best before they even consider letting you apply to their company. Okay, reference inquiries. Honestly, I don't know why they still have this in the book. What do you guys know about references?
Well, you put down people who are gonna say something good about it.
Okay, so great. So I put down people are going to say something good about me. Then what? Then you call them. And guess what? They like me just fine. But my work was pretty average. And I didn't play that great in sandbox. And they had evidence that I spent 10% of my day engaged in, personal stuff. Right? And they say all that. And I don't get the job. Now what? They totally open themselves up to litigation. Because I'm going to turn around and say, really? Prove all that. Prove every single thing you just said. And we pull evaluations, and I got 4.5 out of 5 on my evals, which is not, that's excellent. And there's no indications on my eval that I wasn't a team player, and there's absolutely no proof that I spent 10% of my day engaged in personal projects, right? Or social media, or whatever the hell it is you do when you're not working, okay? So now they're open to litigation. So because of that, reference inquiries, and we still teach it, which also makes me a little crazy, and we still do it through career services where you send in a reference page with your resumes. And I think it's still kind of holding on to like old school stuff. Nobody uses them anymore. That's not 100% true. Some people still do use them in very close-knit. I've got another son that works in Washington, D.C., and that's a very close-knit city. It all depends upon who you know. And so your reference page, even though they might not call them, you want your prospective employer to recognize names off of it. Senators or lobbyists or bigwigs. But really, in a lot of places, you don't call the references anymore because it is very, very highly litigious area, and you don't want to open yourself up to that. So then people kind of responded, oh, you've got to sign a employment reference release. In other words, I have to say it's okay for you to call my references. You find a good HR attorney, and you're still going to have a lawsuit on your hands. So really, honestly, this has really diminished the monacity of inquiries, reference inquiries. Are you guys still schooled in putting them on your resumes? They tell you to still do that? The last couple career service resumes I saw still had them on there. One more little point. If you do still do it, make sure 1,010% that you go to the person that you're asking to put on your reference page and get his or her card so that you can copy down right from their card all of their credentials and their information. Because that's yet another thing, it's Dr. Freshaw, and I put Mr. Freshaw or something. So make sure that you have it right if you're still doing references. And then these are all just digital records that are contained in HR. So I put in a request, we do the recruiting, we do the interviewing, we hire somebody, a hiring notice then goes to payroll, which basically says here's their start date, here's their class or their wage level. Are they temporary or probationary or full-time, permanent, whatever. Their history record contains everything, performance evals, comp, etc. Most of this is digitized now, but I want you to know one of your rights as an employee is that you always have full access to your records. And in the old days when they were paper, you could get copies of everything, right? Actual physical copies of everything. And I always kept, not so much here at the university, but in prior jobs when I was running financial or accounting departments, I would keep, paper copies of my evaluations and my records because I always wanted to know that I had an off-site record of anything that had occurred. So If you have comp adjustments or disciplinary issues, you should ask to sign, they should ask you to sign that you've received it and read it, right? So everybody knows that it was something that everybody saw. And again, it's just reiterating here that litigation is a really big deal in these areas. And I can tell you as an employer, we're in a pretty employee-friendly state here in Montana. From a litigation standpoint, we have a really strong union history here. So there's a lot of pro-employee courts, but that is not so in all states. That is actually shifting in many states that used to be pro-union, including Montana. So you have to do everything you can to make sure that you've got, as an employer, that you've got your ducks in a row and that everything's documented. And basically, so the payroll accounting system, like I said, is sort of married into the HR system as a piece of the HR system. And they're just showing you a couple documents that we use in the payroll system. You'll see these as we go through the semester. The first one is a payroll register. And if you recall, one of the things you're going to be doing, remember that big fold-out register at the back of your book? That's a manual payroll register. You're going to be completing one of those. And basically, that just goes person by person by person, and how many hours did you work, and what's your rate, and what are your deductions, and what's your net paycheck look like. And anybody that's ever had a job, you either have to get a hard copy pay stub or a digital pay stub, right? So that you can follow that. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have ever checked your paychecks? Like checked the taxes? Good, okay. Just being who I am, I've always checked my paychecks, my mortgage payments, are they applied correctly? My, credit card, did they calculate the APR correctly? And I can't tell you how many errors I found over the years. I can't even begin to tell you how many errors I found over the years on all those things I just mentioned and more, okay? It's human beings behind a lot of it. And you might think it's digital, but somebody programmed the computer, right? So it really is up to you to be responsible to make sure that the processing is happening correctly with your financial data. So payroll register, gross pay, deductions, and net pay. And then an earnings record, let me just back up a sec. So this is just for one payroll. January 19th, here's everybody I paid, right? And then there's another record sort of behind the scenes that's just your record, just for you. And that accumulates, here's what I was paid on the 5th and the 12th and the 19th. This is where they keep your cumulative earnings so they can run your W-2 at the end of the year. Okay? And again, in the digital era, do we have these hard copies? No, of course not. But this is, for me, it's helpful to think of a database. What's it doing behind the scenes? And what it's doing is it's updating your employee earnings record and the payroll register. Outsourcing payroll, what does that mean? Yeah, that's been, I'm going to say that's, I'm trying to think what year, we moved here in 93, I was with a life insurance company. And that was right when a big company called ADP was coming out, automated data processing. Payroll is a really time-intensive and sort of complex area, and a lot of companies are like, I make dental instruments or dog food, and all your company does is process payroll. I'm going to let you do the thing that you do really super well so I know that nobody screws up, and if you screw up, then you're liable for the penalties and interest on the screw up, right? And I'll pay you $40 per employee per month to do that. And I don't have to provide a computer or hire a person or oversee their work or provide the workspace. And for a lot of companies, that really makes financial sense to outsource. Okay? What sorts of other tasks do companies outsource besides payroll? Yeah. I'm going to hire your company to vet, recruit, hire, set up the interviews. Absolutely. What else? How about web design? How about social media maintenance? How about accounting? Right, lots and lots of companies anymore, it's a very, pretty status quo model now. It was pretty revolutionary 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But pretty status quo now, like if I make, like I said, dog food or dental instruments, I'm gonna put all my energy into staying really competitive in that market. And you code for systems, and you do accounting, and you're a webmaster, and you do payroll, and I'm gonna outsource to your companies, that's all you do. And you do it real well, right? I just have to choose my contractor to do that. So that's really a new model. What else to say about that? One of the sort of newer things in outsourcing payroll that's been very contentious is that both payroll and income tax processing, the outsourcing has moved overseas. So it's not like a little company called ADP, out of Omaha anymore. All of your payroll and tax data is being transmitted to Bangalore, India, right? And people feel pretty uncomfortable about that data. Of course, they promise that it's secure, but being transmitted, to the other side of the world for processing. And this is just saying basically what I said, that it takes all these things off your plate. You don't have to worry about the payroll taxes or the deposits or IRS compliance. Okay, that was chapter 1. Let's go through these really quick. IRCA. What is it?
Immigration.
Yeah, it's immigration reform. What did it say?
You got 3 days or something to turn in when you get hired. Well, you got to document
High
that
level.
Social Security number and all that.
I think you've got to prove, right, that everybody is qualified or documented to work, right? You have to get an I-9, you have to get an I-9 filled out, which means they have to show like a passport or a Social Security card or a green card or something along those lines, right? Okay. What's ERISA? Employee, Retirement, Income, Security Act. And it really said 3 things. Connor, what's one of them? Okay, you can look at your notes. What does ERISA say? 3 major things. Carlos? All right. I'm not gonna put you guys on the spot.
Independent.
But honestly, by Tuesday, when I put these out, you need to be able to tell me what they are. I could care less about the exact year. But has ERISA been around for 2 years, 20 years, or 200? So I'd like you to say, it's been about 40 years. So you have some sort of historical reference. Because this is all about a progression of a social safety net, isn't it, in this country? There are a lot of places in the world where you have no employment safety net. And there's a lot of countries in the world where you have many, many more social programs to protect you than we have here, and much more socialized help and backbone. So let's see, what else am I forgetting that's up here? Do we have everything? ADEA, FICA needs to go up there. ACA. Yeah, go through and make sure that you've got a comprehensive list out of this first chapter just from the slides. Okay. Should we take a look at the homework? And I'd ask that you did the homework not by copying it, but by kind of answering in your own words. So I'm going to go ahead and take this from you today. So make sure that you've got your name on the top of it. And what I think I'd like you to do, if you did it in pencil, is get out a different colored pen. So if you want to make additional notes on it, I can sort of see when I go through what it was that you added to it from our conversation. Okay, 3, 9, 10, I gotta write this down. 3, 9, 10, 11, and 12. One more time. The homework is from the syllabus, so it says review questions 3, 9, 10, 11, and 12, discussion questions 2 and 5. Yes.
Well, that didn't happen for me. I didn't know it was assigned.
I did. I signed it at the, did everybody hear that at the end of class last time? Okay. Okay, so let's find the solutions here. So I'll start back in the corner, and again, I'm really sorry, I'm still learning names. Are you, who's that? Who are you back in the corner there?
Alex.
What's your last name?
Wells.
Yep, my notes say back left. That's you. Okay, go ahead if you would, please, and read the question to me, and then tell me what you thought. And we're on page 1-25. Thank you.
Who pays the Social Security taxes that are levied by the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, and then it is paid by both the employer and the employee, and the two are called the OASDI and the HI. One is the trust fund for old age and survivors, while the other is the health insurance plan.
Excellent. That was a very comprehensive answer. I will tell you guys that Social Security taxes are the only taxes that both the employee and the employer pay. The employee pays OASDI and the employer matches it. What does OASDI stand for again?
Old age survivor disability.
Very good. Old age, survivors, and disability insurance. And in common lexicon, what do we call OASDI?
Social Security.
Right, Social Security. Okay. And as Alex said, the other piece of it is HI. That's paid by both the employee and the employer. And what do we call HI? Medicare. This is a very common misconception. Both of these sub-elements together form the piece of law called what? FICA. So let me just go over this again. FICA is not synonymous with Social Security. FICA is the umbrella law that contains two very distinct pieces of legislation, OASDI, which is Social Security, and HI, which is Medicare. Okay? FICA is that big umbrella law. About when was that passed? '38. As part of what big societal piece of retrenching? Yeah, it was part of FDR's New Deal, right? And we saw FUTA, SUTA, FICA, FLSA. We're all part of the New Deal. All right. And what's your name, hon?
Mallory.
Mallory. Number 9, please.
Under the Family and Medical Leave Act, the maximum number of weeks of leave that state covered employees return to offer disability spouse employers fulfill. I put up to 26 weeks.
Okay, so that's partially correct. So the categorical answer is 12 weeks. But if you're a member of the what, you can have up to 26.
Armed forces.
If you're a member of the armed services, you get up to 26 weeks. So does that cover me if I needed to go down and take care of my sister in Texas who's going through chemo? What are the family relations? Right, but what are the family relations that FMLA covers? Spouse, parent, child. Okay? Birth or adoption, critical care, illness, okay, parent, so it's lineal descendants. I guess the descendant doesn't go, that one goes down. Lineal relations. And, in-laws. I don't think so because that would inherently then be the spouse's right under his or her FMLA. Yeah. I don't think that in-laws are included. I do know that of all those things I just said, like kids and parents, it'd be like a stepfather or stepchild, or you can put the word step in front of anything and it works. Foster kids, adopted kids. Does it have to be consecutive? Does it have to be 12 weeks in a row? No. Can I use it for myself? Can I take FMLA for myself? Yeah. Now, I'm all over social policy. I think that we need somebody to have our backs as worker bees. But there's also another side to it. So 12 weeks times 5 days, that's 60 working days in a year, right? 60 working days in a year. So what about the situation? This is usually when I'm giving examples, they're examples of real life situations I've seen. Where I have somebody in the workplace who has got substance abuse issues. And he or she doesn't show up every single Monday. Okay. Sick every single Monday. Get a doctor's note, there's some mental health issues going on too. Yeah, it's all verified. Okay. Works in an accounting department, so now you've got your aide 4 days a week instead of 5. So now you're going in on the weekends to do his or her work because they're only there 32 hours rather than 40. So I'm as much as possible, I always try and paint both sides of the picture. FMLA is a lifesaver for a lot of folks that would lose their jobs or not be able to protect their jobs because they were caring for somebody or caring for themselves. But that it's also, particularly on small businesses, puts a lot of strain on them. How big of a business do you have to be to comply with FMLA? 50 employees. And that's within a 75-mile radius. So if I'm a small, feed store, and I've got a shop in Corvallis, and I've got one in Missoula, and I've got one, that's about 75 miles, right? And maybe one in Frenchtown, and there's 15 people or 20 people in each. Alone, I don't have to comply, but together, I come over 50 employees, I've got to comply. All right, number 10. Thank you, Mallory. Number 10, Katie.
What is the primary purpose of the employee retirement income security? My side, the primary purpose for RISA is to provide a safety net based on the pensions otherwise were looked after by a trustee who could be used from the plan.
Good. So the goal of the whole thing is, when I retire, the money that was promised to me, I get. The sort of funny thing, not funny haha, more like funny oh my god, is that pensions have really kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, haven't they? What's the difference between a pension and a retirement plan?
Pension you get retired. It's like a severance package.
Yeah, no, severance package is pretty much thanks for your good work, here you go.
Pension's what you get after you put in so many years.
Right, but who's generally funded a pension?
So you both do.
Okay, so I'll make the differentiation. This is tough. A retirement plan is an umbrella term for what most of us are under. 401k, 403b, simple. KEO, 407C, those kinds of things, where we both put money into, I make the investment choices for my own retirement funds, and then at a certain age, 59 is what tax law tells us, I can start pulling it out. And I can take it all in one big old chunk if I want, and I can take it over, buy an annuity and take it over 30 years, I can do whatever I want with it. A pension is probably what most of your grandparents had, right? Where you worked your whole life at, Stimson, or at the, at the mill, or, I'm from South Dakota, you worked at John Morrell Bacon, or you worked at International Harvester, or you worked at John Deere Tractor, right? Your whole life, and then there was some calculation, and they would pay you out an amount every month, as long as you live. You didn't have to make your own money last. You didn't make any investment decisions. Thank you for a lifetime of service, Lisa. You now get $2,300 a month. Great. Really, the only pensions I know of anymore is public employee retirement system. So if you're a school teacher, a couple of the bigger hospitals have them. Anybody else know any example? Maybe Montana Rail Links. There's very few pensions anymore where it's just like, oh, chill, I don't have to worry about it. They'll just pay me forever.
Police, fire,
I'm sorry?
police and fire.
Police and firefighters, public employees, PERS, public employee retirement system. But I mean, we don't have it here anymore. It stopped here in 1995. Of course, the year I came. So we're self-funded now. I mean, the university matches us, but we choose what we invest in. Okay, so my point is, ERISA is about pension plans, okay? And those really, there's not a lot of those around anymore.
You mentioned that PERS is different though than like the ones that are held those investment laws.
Yeah, PERS is different because you've got a mandatory put in yourself as well. Don't you have to put in like 7.03% or something?
9.7% now.
Is it 9.7? This is worth knowing too. What do financial planners tell us with inflation and medical costs that we should be putting away every year as a percentage of our gross? Take a guess. How much? 15% of your gross is what they're telling you. And then when you have a baby, they're going to tell you, oh, you need to start putting away 5% of your gross per kid for college. That's like, I've still got student loan payments, and I'm trying to buy my first car that runs, and oh yeah, rent comes due every month. It's like, I mean, it's just insane. But yeah, that's the number, is 15%. Okay, number 11. What's your name again? Spencer.
Explain the concept of vesting. I said be able to share employment with terminated prematurely.
Okay, so does it mean when you say terminated prematurely, do I vest if I quit? Yeah, vesting's no matter whether you fire me, I quit. I guess those are the only two things I get transferred, I get my hours cut, whatever. Vesting applies to anybody when they leave their current employment. Okay, so at the end of your life, how often do they say that professionals change jobs now? 7. Say that, I mean, I'm talking traditional professional. You go to college in your 20s, you get out, you start working 22, 23, 24 or something. You're going to change jobs an average of 7 times if you're in a professional position. Okay? So you might end up at the end of your career with 7 different accounts, so to speak, right? Retirement plans. That you've got to figure out kind of how to coordinate and pull money out of and make sure it all lasts. Okay, number 12. What's your name, sir? Colt.
Under ERISA is requested in writing what information must be administered of the pension fund by the participants.
What do they got to tell you if you ask?
Provide your pension benefit.
They've got to tell you what's sitting in there, right? And what else? One other thing. I gotta tell you what's sitting in your account. It's called your accrued benefits. And I gotta tell you what your vesting schedule is. How much is sitting there and what's your vesting schedule? Also, this is just an FYI, but if you leave a job and you want to roll your money into another instrument, so I don't want to have 7 different accounts when I retire. I want to kind of keep them all consolidated. And I used to work for you, and now I'm going to work for you. Is it best for me to have her send me my pension money and then turn around and give it to my new employer? No, that's a taxable transaction and you are going to lose money. Never touch your pension fund before you're 59 years old. You will pay a penalty and income tax.
But if you reinvest it in a certain time frame, it holds at 20%.
That's exactly what happens, and that's a little beyond our scope, but then, yeah, you've got to come up with the 20% to reinvest the principal, and most people don't have that sitting in their bank account. Well, then you're going to get dinged again. The lesson here is, we don't need to get too into the details of tax law, but the lesson is here, when you move jobs, you call up your old administrator and you connect them with your new administrator and you have that money move directly from one account to another. You don't want to ever touch it. And I will also tell you, over the years, particularly during the recession when a lot of people were really struggling for money, I had a lot of clients that, you know, really almost, I guess what I would say, had no choice other than, you know, to go into their 401ks. That is the last thing you ever want to do. Because when you go into your retirement fund, so say I've saved $30,000 and I go take out 10. Am I going to get the 10?
You get a 10% penalty, probably.
First, they're going to take 10% off the top I never get back. It's a penalty for taking it out early.
Tax you on the 10%.
And then it's taxable income, so whatever your tax bracket is. So if I'm in the 20% tax bracket, plus the penalty, my 10 grand's 7, right? So it is really, you know, I would go sell body fluids before I would go into my 401k. Seriously, I mean, it's such a precious thing. And also, just as a little plug, the numbers, what over time does the stock market make historically over the last 80 years? No, closer to 7 to 8. Since about the 20s since they've been measuring it. So when we do a lot of long-term projections, you can use 7 or 8%. And so the math is, if you start putting $50 a month away when you're 22, you'll be a millionaire when you're 65, if you're in that 7 to 8%. Okay? So I'll tell anybody that will listen, everyone's like, I can't afford anything, I'm super broke, I don't have any money. It's like, I really wish somebody had talked to me when I was 25, because I'm pretty sure I could have scraped together $50 a month. And every year you put off starting funding your 401k, obviously, and I don't have the math off the top of my head, but that $50 very quickly becomes, you got to put away $70 a month. And if you wait until your 30s, you know, it's $200 a month. And you wait until your 40s, it's $700 a month, and you get where I'm going. Because you lose that power of compounding interest over time. So the more you can do earlier, believe me, the better off you are, because as life comes around, you get married, you have kids, you got a house payment, that is not when you're going to be able to ramp up your contributions. And then people ramp it up like when they're my age in their 50s, but now you've got no power of time, because I'm right around the corner from retirement. So anything you can do when you're young, you guys, I can just guarantee you that it will blow your mind how much it becomes over the course of 40 years. Huh? Yeah, you can't get back the power of time. You just really can't. Okay. Let's see, you weren't here. What's your name, hon? Ashley. I honestly, I'll do this like a couple times and then I'll just magically one day get it. Okay. Discussion question number 2, please.
What kind of problem can be encountered when requesting references from previous employers' job applicants? And so that you open yourself up to liability.
Basically, I won't beat a dead horse. That's what I was talking about. It's very, you open yourself up to potential litigation, don't you? unless you can prove everything. And it really, so what happened after all the, like the kind of this spurious onslaught of litigation was, the standard answer was, yes, she worked here, here's the date she worked here, and would she be eligible for rehire? And those seem to be sort of safe questions. I don't know what they tell you, but they seem to be the safe questions. Connor, number 5.
Among the questions asked on the application for employment before, Horner Company as follows.
Okay, why don't you take A?
What is the name of your church and what religious holidays do you observe?
Can you ask that? They're asking you, in view of federal and state civil rights laws, do you believe Horner Company is acting legally or illegally in asking each of the questions listed above?
I would say discrimination.
Okay.
Or could be considered.
It could be considered discrimination. Can I ask you, are you available on Saturdays? Sure. Can you work Sundays? Yeah. Sure. Can you work Christmas Day? Right? I can't say, are you Jewish, realizing that Saturday's your Sabbath and I know I need you on Saturdays. I just say, are you available on Saturdays? And if you're not, I'm sorry that, relinquishes your right to be a candidate for this job because I need you on Saturdays. It's my biggest day. Right? I have a retail shop. Okay, so you can't ask that. Carlos B?
Where is your birthplace?
Yeah, can you ask where you're born? You may not ask where you're born. National origin is one of the protected classes in the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
But is that you can't discriminate on it, but that's not the same as asking?
So again, it's not illegal to ask, but if it is the potential for an EEO lawsuit, why would you ask? I mean, there's a small, do you see a situation where you would ask that, where it would be pertinent to the job?
No, but it's just that things where it's like not discriminating on it. There's no harm in asking.
Right, but why would you open yourself up to it? So you ask me where I'm born, and I say Guatemala, and I don't get the job, and she does, and she's from Michigan.
You know, the whole.
Why would you open yourself up?
Understandable, but he needs to say not,
Right, no, it's not illegal, it's just,
and that is what the question asks.
it asks if it's illegal.
Legal or illegal?
Is it acting legally or illegally? Yeah, that's a little jaded. I don't know that it's illegal to ask it. Let's see what they say. I just think it's a really bad idea. Illegally. Answer to these 2 questions could reveal national origin, race, religion, or color. One exception is that when information of this nature is required as a bona fide occupational qualification. Okay, that's definitely a fair statement. So I've got an import-export company. One of my primary vendors is in Malaysia, and your birthplace was Israel. Okay, you're not going to get in and out of Muslim countries in the Middle East with an Israeli stamp on your passport. So there could be situations where it would be an appropriate question. I'll have to look into that. I just think it's a bad idea. Maybe it isn't illegal.
Right, I'm saying there's a distinction between inappropriate and legal.
Yeah, absolutely. See?
Are you a citizen of the United States? That's legal. You either have to be a citizen or you have to have a green card.
Absolutely. In fact, you have to ask that
Yeah,
to comply with which law?
you don't have to be a citizen.
Up here. Which law are you complying with when you determine eligibility for IRCA?
IRCA.
Yep, good. Okay, and Rebecca, what foreign languages can you read, write, or speak?
That's legal.
Okay, when would you ask that?
If you, I guess, like, I don't know.
You would not want to be asking that unless there's a bona fide occupational reason. Okay, if I come and apply here and they ask me if I speak Spanish, what are you trying to get at?
Yeah.
My niece is a kindergarten teacher in South Austin. Yeah, it's pretty important she knows how to speak Spanish. Okay, so you've got to have a tie into the occupation. Otherwise, you're just opening yourself up to litigation.
I was gonna say that too, it's like depending on like where you live, could really vary on that. Because most southern states require you to know how to speak Spanish because there's such a close border between Mexico and other.
Absolutely.
Same
Or
thing
like my
living in
son,
Washington.
yeah,
You wanna know
absolutely.
more like Japanese as well.
Absolutely, yeah, maybe you want to speak some specific languages. Okay, great job. So, please make sure that you put that on the table on the way out. I've got about 5 more minutes, and I want to show you, or 9 minutes actually. I want to show you these tax tables. So I don't know, it's interesting, Jonathan, it does say here illegally. So I'll have to look into that.
There's a big difference between illegal and
There is a big difference between illegal and just dangerous.
inappropriate.
Yeah, and just dangerous. Okay, so on Moodle, as I said, there's this payroll tax tables 2017 everyone print. So I just want to show you what this is. Oh, come on. Really? It's just a Word file. Now, maybe I'm going to have to just, okay, and now I'm not responding. I'm just going to put it up here. So you guys are going to print this, but I'm just going to talk about it extemporaneously up here. So basically what this table is, and you need to have this totally memorized, because this is the guts of the class. And I barely ever tell people to memorize things, because that's just, it's so an antiquated way to learn. And it's not pedagogically sound, but you actually do need to memorize this, just as if you were going into a new language, you would have to memorize the alphabet and the sounds, because that's, you know, like your launching point. So what this is I'm going to write down what for taxes employees pay from payroll, and what for taxes employers pay, and what the rates and what the caps are. And I'll explain what a cap is in a second. Here's the rates. OASDI, you pay 6.2%, and your employer matches 6.2%. Will it open on your screen, because I'm not sure my SUDA cap. Do you have it open? I have to say these caps change every year, and 20 days into the new year, I'm a little, I probably am going to have the caps off by a couple $100. Thank you. Okay. HI is 1.45, and it's matched 1.45. So let's just stop for a moment here and do some math, some mental math. What then does your employer pay on your behalf into FICA? Right, because OASDI and HI together make what? FICA?
7.65.
That's it. And you pay, of course, 7.65. Okay, stick with me here. I don't know how good you guys are with math in your head. So altogether, from both the employee and the employer standpoint, for every $1 that's earned, how much goes into our FICA system? 15.3, right? Because 7.65 plus 7.65. For every $1 earned, 15.3 cents goes into FICA. You're supposed to say, wow, how can it possibly ever become insolvent? That's a big number. 15.3 is a big percentage. Okay? There is no cap on HI. In other words, if I'm one of those lucky insurance executives and I make $22 million a year, I pay 1.45% on all of it. And my employer, Aetna Insurance, pays 1.45% on all of it. And what did I tell you about ACA? What's that additional tax for Medicare? 0.9%. but only if I'm single and make more than what?
200,000.
200, or I'm married filing joint and I make more than
250.
250. And then it's only the amount over that. So my 22 million bucks a year, I pay that 0.9 on, if I'm single, 21,800,000. In addition to 1.45 on the whole amount. OASDI is very different, and this is where a lot of controversy is. There's a cap. And what that means is when I make $118,500, I stop paying OASDI, and my employer stops matching. Now, that might seem like a ton of money, which in Missoula, that's a pretty darn good living. But I will tell you, where my son lives in San Francisco, secretaries make this. They're not high income. Okay? You're living $3,000 to a $5,000 a month rental flat. They stop paying OASDI here, but they're accruing, right, a lot of untaxed money past that. So I'm just planting seeds for you to think about how our tax code looks and how our tax law functions. Okay? There's two more taxes that an employee pays, and that's FIT and SIP. Federal income tax and state income tax. There is no cap on income taxes. My 22 million bucks a year as the CEO of Aetna. I'm going to pay federal and state income tax on all that. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to hire a really good tax attorney and probably pay you less than you do. But theoretically, I'm going to pay federal income tax on that whole 22 million. The federal tax system, the lowest bracket is 10%, and the highest is 39.6. And in Montana, our lowest bracket is 1% and our highest is 6.9. The two taxes that an employer pays in addition to OASDI and HI is FUTA and SUTA, which are unemployment taxes. SUTA is a flat 0.6% and there's a $7,000 cap. SUTA, the cap changes every year, and this year it is 31.4 in Montana. And the rates vary depending upon how much unemployment you have, but they're generally around 1 to 6%. But they can go a little higher and lower. Okay, so for Tuesday, first off, have a great weekend, and good job on your first week of school. Thank you. Read Chapter 2, know your acronyms, and know your tax table. Okay. Have a great first weekend.
So what are you going to do about the same day?
Call tech.